This video is for hooks and snappy endings. Once students reach stage 7 and 8 in informative explanatory writing, they need to now start adding hooks and snappy endings. So when you're writing information, you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In the introduction, we need to hook in the reader. We're having children expand their writing, and we're going to have them add a hook. Start their paper off with a hook. What should a hook do? It should capture your reader's attention. And many times when students write hooks, they really don't understand what to do, so they tend to have very similar hooks. For example, let's say they were writing about plants. Many students will write, "Do you want to hear about a plant?" No, I really don't. That doesn't capture my attention. It doesn't make me want to read on. So I need to have my attention captured as a reader so that I will actually read your paper. That's the whole purpose about a hook. So we have our introduction, hook in the reader, capture them, get them so they want to read your paper. Write something interesting to pull them in. Then we give our big idea, what our whole paper's about. We go to our body, which will have all that information to tell about the big idea. And finally, we have our conclusion, where we'll repeat that big idea, but use different words, and then end it with a snappy ending. The snappy ending is a way for children to end their paper with something interesting, but tying these two together will make your paper have even more sophistication. So that snappy ending many times is going to end with something interesting, something that the reader should take away from this information, but also connect back up to the hook so that it all goes together from the hook all the way through the information to that snappy ending. I'm now going to walk you through and show you how we get the hook and then connect it to the snappy ending. I have several different strategies that I'm going to show you. You need to choose the one that you think would work best with your students. This page is filled with stems, different words or phrases or frames that your students can utilize to help them create their hooks. This has been a wonderful technique that I've used for students because sometimes I may tell them, oh, ask a question or tell something humorous or tell something interesting. That's not enough. When I give them stems, that helps them even more to create a hook. So these are different types of stems that you have on these pages for your students to utilize when they need to create a hook. On your facing page, I have my snappy endings. What we're going to do there is remind the students what their hook was, and then we're going to end the paper with something interesting in that snappy ending. That, of course, connects back up to the hook. And in this technique, I have also shown different types of words, phrases, or sentence frames that your students can use in order to create their snappy endings. Let's now walk through how we can create hooks and snappy endings using STEM pages. Grab a blank piece of paper and we'll get started. We'll start with our hooks. The first thing we need to do is, when we are planning a hook, we have to make sure that the children keep in mind what's the big idea about the hook. What is it that we are going to lead our reader into? Because sometimes when children write hooks, it has nothing to do with the paper, and it ends up becoming something that's disjointed and leads the reader totally off topic. We not only want to grab our reader's interest, we want to lead them towards that big idea, what the whole paper's about. So we have to begin by saying to the students, and this is what I usually do. I usually have a stick person with a pencil, meaning what was the big idea that the author, you the student, wrote? What information are you telling about? But also below I have a stick person, and this is what do most people know about this topic, this big idea. So we're going to just freely brainstorm about this. We're going to use one of the paragraphs that we had written in our section about the Statue of Liberty. What was the purpose or big idea that we were writing about the Statue of Liberty? Oh, we were describing the Statue of Liberty. Okay, so there was our purpose describing. We were describing all her parts, that they were symbols. And what were they symbols of? Symbols of liberty, freedom, Where in the United States of America? How this is actually a monument. So we're going through and we're just saying from that big idea, what were we as the writer telling our reader? That's all we're doing. We're brainstorming about the big idea. Now we're going to go to the person here and we're going to look at what theme or message should the reader get from this information. Let's go to just the stick person. This means what message is this information giving people? How should people feel? What should they learn from this information? So we're just going to brainstorm. Let's see, feeling. Let's go to feeling. Oh, when people see the Statue of Liberty, we know that there have been visitors. We know that there are people from our own country. There are people who are immigrants who see the Statue of Liberty. So these are people from all over the world. They see the Statue of Liberty, and many have talked about how they've actually shed tears. The Statue of Liberty makes them feel emotional. It makes them want to cry. It gives them hope. What message did they learn from the Statue of Liberty? What do they feel? What do they learn? So look what we're doing. We're just freely brainstorming things about the Statue of Liberty. Oh, right away they'll learn, wow, that's a gigantic piece of art. It's not just a statue that you can hold in your hand. We're talking about this is huge. It's actually on its own island, standing there. Ooh, look, it's like a lighthouse. It has this light that flickers and this torch. It guides people into the country. It welcomes people. We've created all these ideas about the Statue of Liberty. Something as simple as just what was the information we wanted to get across, and also what do a lot of people know about the Statue of Liberty. Once we have that, then we go to looking at our stems. Let's plan our hook. So you would put a hook on your page. And you would say, let's look at all these ideas here, and let's look at what kind of hook we can create using some of our phrases or words in order to create this hook. I could begin with a verb. We have all these different types of verbs here that could start a powerful sentence. I could begin with an interjection, with a sound effect, onomatopoeia, with adverbs. I could have a sentence frame, or I could have a question that I could ask. So I'm looking at all this information. Let's start with the sentence frame. How about strange but true? So I have strange but true. Maybe I'll just write strange here and then finish up my idea. Strange but true. What is it that I could say that's strange or true? Let me look at all my information up here. What's strange? This is a gigantic statue, but what's really strange about this but true? Ooh, that it brings people to tears or even gives them goosebumps when they see it. Let's put that there. Strange but true. A statue could bring people to tears or cover them with. Excellent. That is a great hook. Let's use another one. So notice what I'm doing. I'm just taking all my ideas here, freely brainstorming, then I'm getting a sentence frame to help me start my hook. What's another one that I could use? I'm going to go over to the sound effects, and here I have the sound, the twinkling sound, but also I can see that twinkle. And that is a great one that I could use because right away when I see all these sound effects, I see things like crunch, slurp, sizzle, but I'm going down here and I see twinkle. I think twinkle makes sense because when I'm looking at the Statue of Liberty, I think of twinkle, twinkle. It's almost as if the Statue of Liberty's torch is twinkling and it almost looks like a star. Twinkle, twinkle, is that a star off in the distance? Maybe I could ask something like that. Or I could look at, we know that this statue is about freedom and we know it's about liberty. Twinkle, twinkle. Maybe I could use my verb gaze. So I'm going to jump over to gaze and say, twinkle, twinkle, gaze at Lady Liberty's beauty and how she's lighting the way into the United States of America. So again, I'm looking at my ideas and I'm having starter sentences. Let's use another one. Let's go to an interjection. Unbelievable. Let's use that one. So I'll start with unbelievable. And again, you can write these out, or you could just put keywords there to remind you how you're going to write these hooks. Unbelievable, how can? So we have unbelievable, and then we had that how can question. Oh, this would be great. So all these people are feeling emotional. They're feeling joy and hope. What would be unbelievable about that? Oh, from someone who's waving a torch and holding a tablet. Unbelievable. How can millions of people, so I'm going to just put millions of people here, so I'll just put a bunch of stick people, feel joy and happiness from a lady waving a torch and holding a tablet. So at that point, maybe I'll just put the torch up here and then holding the tablet. I'll show the tablet. So that way I remember that. What's another way that I could do a hook? Maybe I could go over to the word admire, and I could have admire. What am I going to admire? Oh, I talked about how she's a gigantic statue. She's in an island. Ooh, and all these immigrants pass by. So I could say something like, admire a gigantic piece of art in the middle of an island. So I'll put the island there. Lighting the way, so I'll put light here. Lighting the way as people pass by. Wow, that sounds great. Imagine a gigantic piece of art in the middle of an island, lighting the way as people pass by. Excellent. So I'm just taking, again, ideas that I have up here, using my starter sentence. Let's look at one more. Choose the riddle frame. This is a favorite. Many children love to form riddles for their hooks. So now we're going back to our subject, the Statue of Liberty. What are all the things that we're talking about? So remember, we're always focusing on what we're writing about. We're talking about the symbols that she has. So let's take a symbol. What has a crown and waves at visitors? Ooh, there you go. That's a great way for the reader to want to keep reading so they can find out the answer to that riddle. Basically, what we've done is brainstorm everything we know about the Statue of Liberty. Then we've used some starter words or phrases, or we've also used some sentence frames in order to help create those hooks. Let's connect those hooks up to the snappy ending. Notice on this facing page, this was the blank piece of paper that you had, and I recorded all of the different hooks that we just made. I put them here so that I could show you want to put an arrow and connect whatever the hook is that you created to that snappy ending. So that's why when you look at your snappy ending page, you'll notice it says, go back and look at your hook. What was your hook? Next, look at the different types of snappy endings, words, phrases, or frames that you could use to form a snappy ending. An ending that connects back up to the hook and also is interesting to the reader. On our snappy ending page, we have verbs, interjections, we have signpost words, we have adverbs, sentence frames, we also have questions. The first hook we had was, strange but true, a statue can give you goosebumps. This is all about how the Statue of Liberty gives you that emotional feeling. You feel goosebumps. It could bring you to tears. We want to connect that idea and leave the reader with that information in our snappy ending. Let's go down to an interjection. Don't hesitate. People of the world, visit the Statue of Liberty and you will feel goosebumps on your body and tears run down your face. So notice I'm trying to connect my hook to my snappy ending, and I use don't hesitate, go as a way to start that snappy ending. Let's go to the next one. Twinkle, twinkle. Gaze at pure beauty lighting the way for freedom. We now know that we're talking about, from our hook, we're reminding ourselves that this is the Statue of Liberty guiding people into this country and leading them towards freedom. Let's look now at our snappy ending. We want to leave with that idea again, but we need to begin with some sort of snappy ending stem or frame and then finish up with that thought. Let's go to our sentence frames. So we could say, thank goodness for Lady Liberty so she can lead people to freedom in this world. Excellent. So we'll start off with, thank goodness for Lady Liberty. So I'm just going to draw her up here for Lady Liberty so she can lead people in this world towards The idea of freedom. Love that. Our next hook that we had was unbelievable. How can millions of people feel joy and happiness from a lady waving a torch and holding a tablet? So again, we were looking at the fact that this is a statue, she has a torch, she's holding this tablet. Why in the world would that make people feel joy and happiness? Ooh, let's go to the answer is. The answer is obvious. Lady Liberty is covered with symbols of freedom. So we were answering, how can millions of people feel joy and happiness from a lady waving a torch and holding a tablet? The answer is obvious. Lady Liberty is covered with symbols of freedom. Let's go to the next one. Admire a gigantic piece of art that's standing in the middle of an island, lighting the way for all who pass her. Let's go to journey. Let's begin with a verb to connect this. Admire a gigantic piece of art standing in the middle of the island, lighting the way for all who pass her. Let's connect that snappy ending. Journey to Lady Liberty so you can admire this piece of art that represents liberty to all. Let's go to the last one. What has a crown and waves at visitors? Let's use an adverb. So we will start with the adverb incredibly. And next we want to answer that question. What has a crown and waves at visitors? Incredibly, it is a statue covered with symbols of freedom. When you're first teaching students how to write hooks and snappy endings, you can do exactly what we did here. We brainstormed what all the information was about. Then we used those ideas with stems to create hooks, and we connected those hooks back up with snappy endings and started the snappy endings with stems. It's a wonderful way for your students to start coming up with hooks. This activity could be done whole group so students could see many hooks about the same information. They could choose one of these, or they could make their own hook depending on where they are when they're first learning this strategy. This also allows students to see how the hooks and the snappy endings are connected together. When you're planning them out together, now what they can see is, oh, I need to make sure that my hook and snappy ending are about the same thing. And that's really critical because you did all this brainstorming. What's all this information about? When I write a hook, where do I want to lead the reader? I want to lead them to the big idea. So I brainstorm. Well, what's the big idea about? What do people know about the big idea? Let's brainstorm all this information. Now let's create a hook. So it only makes sense that your snappy ending should connect to that hook, that brainstorm of what all the information is about, what people would know about this information. It's a fabulous activity for them not only to plan all different types of hooks, have strategies to do so, but to see how they're interconnected together. Now let's go to the next set of pages so that I can show you another way for you to teach children to write hooks and snappy endings. Remember, I'm showing you many different instructional strategies. You need to choose the one that you think would work best for your students. Our next technique for you to teach children how to write hooks and snappy endings is mentor text. Mentor text is when you actually use another author's work and you're pulling out their style that they've used and their technique. And in this case, we're going to use mentor text to connect it to a hook and also to connect it to a snappy ending. And how do we do that? You have mentor text in your classrooms all the time. You could have mentor text from your science books, different informational books. Again, another informational book. And here's one of my favorites is when you have weekly readers like Times for Kids or kids magazines, Ranger Rick, National Geographic. They have all these different types of magazines or simple little readers that you can supply to your children, and they can use these to find hooks. Why do I like these so much when it comes to mentor text for hooks? Well, it's because there are numerous articles in these little magazines. How do many of the articles pull in the reader? They use hooks. So now you could have a small little publication filled with hooks. When I first kick off this activity, I just have them flip through different articles, find the hooks, they tell the hooks, and then we decide, do we want to take the author's entire sentence and write it down, or do we want to just take some keywords and record it as a stem? Once we record the author's words or stems from the author's hooks, we can go back and we can identify the type of hook that they used, a question, a sound effect, an interesting fact, an action, a vivid sensory description, an emotional statement, humor, a quote, dialogue, or thoughts, or maybe a mixture of those. So these little buttons are ways for students to be able to identify the type of hook, and then they actually have the author's words or stems taken from the text so they can utilize them later to make their own hooks. How do they do this? Is an example of a mentor text wall chart, an anchor chart that we created for hooks using mentor text, in which we went through all the different magazines and books and pulled out author sentences or stems, and we started a list up on our wall chart so that later the students could go back to either an actual author's sentence or they could go back to stems. You could record these together, or you could actually just separate them into sentences and stems. And the students all year long can keep adding to this chart. This is a fabulous activity. The reason why is because when they're reading, they will be more attentive to hooks. They will be able to identify what kind of hooks they are, and they will be able to create different types of sentences using the style of authors that they're reading. When we're writing our hook for our paper, we can select an author's sentence. We're using their style. We're not using their content, their style. And in this case, we had sharks attack, dolphins win, and we now attached our content. We had just finished writing about the digestive system. Nose smells, stomach benefits. This is going to be the same process. You're going to look at how an author ends their papers. And over here, I have all these different boxes that show different ways authors would end with a snappy ending. What would be in their snappy ending? Maybe they might ask a question or show how the reader should be affected from this information. Challenge the reader to do something or think another way. End with an emotional statement. Try to persuade the reader. State a new possibility. End with a quote or dialogue. State a judgment. Tell what you think or feel now that you've given them all this information. End with a fact. End with humor. Shock the reader. Or state a universal theme, a message that you want to get across to the reader. These are many techniques authors will use when they finish writing information. So what did we do? We went and did the same thing like we just did with the hooks. We went and recorded all the different types of snappy endings, sentences using mentor text, an author's sentence, how they ended their information, or stems of how they ended their information, their snappy endings. So we had author snappy ending sentences and we had lists of authors' stems. When we were writing our own papers, we would take our content and either choose a stem or the style of an author's snappy ending in order to create our own snappy ending. You have two different instructional techniques that you can use in order to teach your children how to write interesting hooks and snappy endings that will pull your reader and grab their interest to read the information, as well as leave them thinking with something interesting. And it's all tied together so that the hook and snappy ending are connected. Please try these techniques. You will find that your students will have much more interesting ways to begin and end their papers.